Well, this is the interesting point, is that we know that RJ is considered by the authorities as a suspect in this, well, they're saying according to Fikile Mbalula. But Atul Gupta doesn't appear to believe that he is anyway at this point criminally implicated. The asset forfeiture unit stated under oath that he had received 10 million rand from the Estina bank accounts into his personal bank accounts. And the basis for his challenge is basically saying that, you know, there's no evidence, that there's no bank statements proving that in fact he did get that money. It's interesting because it's not framed as a direct denial. It's framed as you don't have the evidence to show this. But it's apparent that Atul Gupta hasn't read the application of the asset forfeiture unit, because they annexed 5 Libre Arch files full of bank statements to make their case. And in addition, we know that they subsequently got, of course, those Bank of Baroda transactions, again as part of their sort of Prevention of Organized Crime Act against these accused. So his allegation is essentially you haven't proved the case, but it's very apparent that I don't think he's actually read the application, and he says as much in his case.
So what happens now? Because the Hawks say that they want him, the police minister say he's wanted in South Africa, he needs to be investigated and charged, and now he goes to a court before that even happens and says, actually this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening this way.
Well, the police minister said RJ is wanted. There was a lot of misreporting in the beginning about him being on the run, and Times Live reporting that he was the person on the run, which in fact now it appears was AJ. What I think is interesting is that Atul is a very senior person and involved in this whole thing, and there is an allegation that he received this money and was clearly part on the state's version of a money laundering scheme. But at this point, we don't have concrete verification that there is an arrest warrant out for him like there is for AJ. Yeah. Now, the investigators that I've spoken to said, you know, he is definitively a suspect, but that is what the investigators are saying are going to be part of the second phase of arrests linked to that, and that of course may or may not include certain high-ranking ANC officials as well. But what's happened now is he said, I was out of the country, I've been out of the country since the 2nd of February. I feel that this court order is unfair. His lawyers and the lawyers for a number of Gupta companies are going to court in Free State on the 1st of March, and they're going to ask the court to reconsider the preservation order that was put on the company's accounts and was put on Atul Gupta's accounts. I don't think they're going to be successful there. I think the NPA, as I understand it, is preparing a response where they're going to basically say, we've given you 5 Libre Arch files full of bank statements. I think you should reconsider your argument. It's also apparent from the papers that have been filed by Ronika Raghavan, who, of course, is one of the accused in the Estina Dairy Project matter, that they're also going to fight the forfeiture unit application. And as part of the applications brought by the companies, they're saying, well, if you don't reverse these preservation orders, we want certain amounts of money. I think it's about 6 million here, like 4 million there, etc., which we say are loans or interest and shouldn't fall under the amount that's been seized. So there's an apparent attempt through the courts to claw back some of this money, which I think speaks to the level of desperation. This is desperate litigation. For someone to go to court without actually having read the application, seemingly not aware of those files full of bank statements, and to desperately be trying to get access to 10 million rand, indicates to you perhaps the level of desperation that family is in, or Atul is in, and those companies are in, because on a legal basis you don't go and litigate when you haven't actually read the application.
And of course, this would have been tested in court anyway. That's why the NPA put these charges forward. It would have been brought up in court. So Atul Gupta is going to court for this reconsideration of the preservation of 10 million rand. What then happens, and what are the implications for his brother Ajay, who is the fugitive?
Well, you know, Ajay, I mean, I think the big issue with the Ajay situation is that we have the Hawks saying last week that this is not linked to Estina. We then have the police minister on the weekend saying it is. From the AFU papers that I've read, there's not a manifest reference to RJ. Of course, the Gupta companies are referenced. But I think there's real uncertainty at this point as to whether the Estina issue is actually what he's being sought for. Of course, the police minister is saying it is, but he was meant to appear in the Joburg Specialized Commercial Crimes Court. And on a jurisdictional level, you know, if he was wanted for Estina, he would have been asked to present himself in Free State. So there are big concerns. I think the way in which this litigation has been handled speaks of desperation. I think it speaks of a family that are kind of in a very bad situation, potentially financially and in terms of the potential of criminal action now. But it really suggests that, you know, given all the allegations against them, to be fighting over 10 million rand indicates to you that perhaps things are not going very well. Because if you were in a financially sound position and you know, had accumulated all the wealth that you allegedly were at one point linked to, 10 million rand going to court, exposing yourself to this, you know, you wouldn't do it.
They, of course, call the NPA dishonest. Any word from them yet, or are you still waiting?
Well, basically, the NPA said, look, we're going to file. You know, there's obviously concern from them that you know, Atul Gupta is ignoring the evidence that they put on the table. But for a court or a judge to grant an ex parte preservation order of this nature, the court will consider all the evidence. They're not just going to do it out the blue. And there were these bank statements. And I think that there is a real apprehension that possibly, you know, Atul Gupta didn't know that when he made this application. It's very blunt. And I think what's going to happen is that, as I understand, Knox Molela, who's the acting head of operations at the Asset Forfeiture Unit, they're preparing an asset forfeiture response to this. They'll put all that evidence again on the table, and they're going to fight that. But I don't think it's anywhere close to finished. I mean, they're going to fight the forfeiture unit order. They're going to fight along the way, because in some respects, if they don't, I suppose, as desperate as their litigation has been, it will be seen as kind of a partial acknowledgement that perhaps there is some truth to these allegations.
All right, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. That's our specialist reporter, Karen Moore. Now, just a reminder of our breaking news story. Atul Gupta is challenging the court order that froze 10 million rand from his personal bank account as the proceeds of crime.